Poster's note. This chapter has had a sex scene edited out of it. To let you know where the edit is, there will be a *****. End poster's note. The Chaotic Touch of Harmony. By Law Abiding Pony. Chapter 8. A Crack in the Wall. An hour had passed since Loki's oath to fully utilize her invisibility, and it only ended in frustration for the Earth Pony. She had been so preoccupied in the excitement of being able to pull off practical jokes without the risk of getting caught, that she made several poor choices in judgment. At the moment, she was trying to distract herself from one such lapse in judgment by gazing down from the top of the Civic Center, trying to scope out a good mark. The roof was cluttered enough to allow them to drop the cloak. Toon smoldered in seething anger over the past hour, and Loki was getting desperate to find something to distract her from her conscience. You wouldn't happen to know where a joke store would be by chance, would you? I could use some work aids. Alexia huffed indignantly. No. Are you still mad I tried to tweak the pyrotechnics on stage? Oh no, why would I care that you could have hurt or killed somebody with the fireworks aimed at the school? The sarcasm was so venomous it physically stung the green pony. She hid the guilt behind an aloof mask. You can't tell me you never wanted to blow up your school before. Everyone's had that fantasy at least once in their life. Alexia was resting on her back and turned her head to glare at her friend. Did you also forget pulling the fire alarm in the Chinese buffet restaurant? Or that you had the nerve to ask me to use my magic to tie the policeman's shoelaces together? Hey, I didn't know that old couple would have gotten trampled like that. The guilt became a weight around her spirit. I mean, the paramedics got there in time. If I hadn't have kept the panicked mob from stomping on them further, there would have been no one for the medics to save. Alexia fumed while turning her head back towards the sky. Loki's mask chipped away as the weight grew. I'm sorry, okay? What else do you want from me? I want you to use some common sense. Toon shot back. Pranks are all well and good, Loki, but you have a nasty habit of making them dangerous. Loki remained silent for several minutes. Toon assumed the mayor was ignoring her at that point, so the unicorn sat up to talk directly at her. You know what you need. She received no answer. You need a different hobby. Loki wasn't watching the crowds anymore. Instead, she was staring vacantly into the distance as her guilt sapped any remaining joy out of her. I never wanted someone to get hurt because of a stupid prank. I've always been careful about them before. A few incidences with Conrad came to mind. When I'm sober anyway. Alexia's comment finally registered to the despondent mayor. Like what? Gardening. Toon answered with less hostility than before so she could sell the suggestion better. I don't know the first thing about plants other than eating them. Well, the book said an earth pony's magic excels at raising plant life. Alexia adopted a more light-hearted tone. Plus I've heard it can be very therapeutic. She dismissed it outright. Forget it. I'm a hacker, not a farmer. It couldn't hurt to try, you know. Toon replied flatly. Nope. Not doing it. The Earth Mare couldn't stand the sight of the fair she had wronged for another second in the face of Alexia's condemnation. Grumbling more to herself than Alexia, she stood up while activating her cloak. I'm bored. And it's not worth sticking around any longer. Alexia followed suit and walked over to the ledge to be next to Loki. The green pony grabbed onto Toon's forelegs while being lifted up in the unicorn's magic. By using Loki as an elevator, Alexia gently set them both down on the pavement. The unicorn found out the hard way that directing levitating herself was by far more difficult than doing it by proxy. With the concert revving up to begin, the streets were nearly deserted. Toon was a little out of breath from maintaining the cloak and levitating over double her weight, even if it was only to slow their descent. So where do you want to go now? Where you've wanted to go ever since we ditched Daniels. Back home. Loki answered tersely. Alexia chased after the grumbling mare. Look, I get that you've led a criminalistic lifestyle before becoming a pony. I get that. She caught up and placed a hoof on Loki's withers. But I prefer to stay in the law's good graces. You don't have to pick a fight with the cops anymore, Loki. You say that because you could make a living that way. She wanted to throw Alexia's hoof off of her, but the sympathetic eye from Alexia stopped her from trying. I did what I had to put food on the table. Alexia heard the pain in her voice and squeezed her foreleg into a sidelong hug. It was a difficult task to keep walking like that, but they both managed. And you still put food on our table. I'm not saying to give up what you do. What I am saying, is that you need to bring it down several notches. I can take most of your antics, Loki, but you drive Conrad and half of Selina crazy with your brand of insanity. Loki was not one for seriously listening to anyone but herself, and even less willing to trust anyone she wasn't paying good money. A life of peeking out of the window for the figurative CIA surveillance van and being betrayed by work partners did that to a person. Yet she couldn't help herself but to accept the friendly affection. She's not controlling me with some sort of magic, is she? Loki glanced at the unicorn to find her horn was inactive. Strange. Maybe the samurai is onto something about her. Alexia was expecting some sort of response, but decided to let the silence hang and let go to walk normally. The silence reigned until they reached the car and Alexia unlocked the doors with her magic. Only after Loki was behind the wheel did she speak. Alex. She waited for her to give a nonverbal response. After everything I put you through, the jokes, the cops, and the incident with the garbage bag, Toon felt a strong pulse of anger from the very mention of it, but kept it controlled in the face of Loki's somberness. What I'm trying to say is that I think I'd have gone completely mad by now if not for you. If not murdered by Conrad first. And that I am sorry. For everything. You mean more crazy than you already are? The Silver Mare kept the thought to herself in the interest of diplomacy. I accept, Loki. I just do what I think will help. There's not much more to it than that. Maybe from your perspective. She muttered under her breath. Hey. Loki waved her query off. Just trying to find the keys. After pulling them from under the seat, she started the car and tried to find a comfortable way to sit in a seat made for humans. Toon kept waiting for Loki to say anything more, but after 15 minutes she realized her companion was done talking. Well, okay then, she said quizzically before letting the matter drop. Just promise me one thing. Loki said nothing for a couple of miles. Her guilt over the pranks gone wrong kept her from speaking until Toon put a reassuring hoof on the green mare's withers. Sure. Name it. Promise me you will keep your word on donating money to the meteor victims. I know you make far more than we could honestly spend. It's not my money, so all I can do is ask. The car stopped at a red light, giving Loki a chance to look Alexia in the eyes. Loki had never been one for charity in her life. It had always consisted of hard partying, flashy and expensive toys, and strip clubs. A month ago the idea of donating to charity, no matter the cause, wouldn't have interested her in the slightest. Yet between her guilt at ruining the fair and Toon's request, Loki felt that needed to change. I promise, Alex, she said at length after getting the car moving when the light switched. I'll donate $1 million. More effective than Facebook likes, right? She added at the last second in a miserable attempt to inject some humor into the car. The silver unicorn smiled warmly. That it is. Thank you, Loki. The earth pony nodded quietly and refocused on the road. With her companion feeling better, Alexia's horn flashed to make her spell book appear before her. I think I was at the review on page 190. The 2-page review was structured differently than every other one before it. Instead of having a quick summary of what was needed to unlock the next chapter, the first page bore smaller text so both it and the diagram below it could fit on the single page. The other, and stranger of the two, shimmered and faded as if it was a hologram instead of a physical piece of paper. Only when she put her left hoof, which still bore the key symbol in the center of her soul, did the page solidify into legibility. I don't remember going into illusion magic yet. As always, Alexia started with the first half. Now that we've covered the basics of crystal forging, all that is required for further progression is to present a filled reservoir crystal attuned to your magical signature. As you no doubt know from previous readings, having a reservoir crystal is useful to just about every pony. Pegasi can use it as a supplement to increase endurance during prolonged flights, and unicorns can use them in emergencies when either is not readily available. For those earth ponies who make use of enchanted crystals or tend to find themselves overworked can find possessing a reservoir crystal very helpful as well. Please note that only a reservoir crystal will be accepted, as you will need it if you wish to continue further into your studies. No other gem will suffice. Alexia recalled how horribly exhausted she felt when crafting the topazes brought her into first stage magical fatigue. I think it would be a good idea to make more than one. The fatigue was unlike any she had felt before, and at the time of the first crafting other matters had kept her thoughts from dwelling on it. Looking back now at the second, when she was alone with Conrad, who again had to supply an energy drink to keep her conscious. The numbness of her body suffering from magic withdrawal gave her shuddering chills. Better make at least 3. Her attention shifted to the next page. While my first and primary reason for making each chapter shielded by an illusion spell was for academic nostalgia, I did so for another purpose. Toon could almost feel the author's mood go from an instructor who loved her job, to that of a concerned ruler. If this page even exists in your copy at all, then you are either a member of my recently formed Dusk Guard or you are a foolhardy thief. Assuming the former is true, you will be pleased to know that all previous and subsequent chapters that are available to the public are still accurate in this copy. In addition, all data and theories contained within are the most up-to-date variants as of the summer of 5 roll. As such, the tome can still be used as its intended reference guide. As you may already be aware of certain parties being interested in acquiring the guard version of this tome, no simple key will suffice. Given how this guide deals only with pony magic, only an individual with the soul of a pony is capable of unlocking this section of the book. Alexia grimaced at the requirement. Why make it the soul instead of the body? Loki glanced at the outburst and passed it off as Toon's self-musings. The reason occurred to the unicorn the moment she said it. Oh right. Transformation magic. Well, that shoots us down. She was about to skip it as impossible when curiosity got the better of her and kept reading. The other key is for me to personally cast the unlocking cantrap upon you. I shouldn't have to mention the changeling invasion a couple of years ago to explain why such precautions are needed. With both prerequisites met, which you should technically have by the time you're reading this, but mistakes happen, the classified pages will be open to you. Toon was utterly perplexed by the existence of the page. Who or whatever gave me this book obviously wanted me to learn from it, but why bother with the military version if I have no way of ever obtaining the princess's half of the encryption key? She looked at the lower half of the page and saw 2 dime-sized circles. One was right below the last paragraph with the other at the bottom of the page. The one on top was glowing pristine lavender. She closed the book to concentrate better and let it rest on the floor mat. Loki had a music station playing, but Alexia was used to drowning out background noise. So even if I did somehow find a spell to let me talk to her, how would I ever convince her to let me see it? It's not like she has any reason to trust a human-turned-pony after all. Assuming she believed me. And even if she did, I'm not in any real danger to need such magic. Her thoughts fell back to how she met Conrad. Actually, I probably will need those spells, but even then I'm sure the guard have a much greater comprehensive understanding of magic than I do. She shrugged at herself. I'd probably need to spend a lot longer learning this stuff before being able to use the guard section anyway. Without any room to draw a conjuration circle in the car, she resigned herself to leaving the Dusk Guard page alone and brought the book up again and began rereading the fundamentals of divination. The rest of the drive home consisted of little more than passing fields, music, and the occasional car. Loki kept to the speed limit to keep any lurking speed traps from chasing after them. The manor was lit upon their return, and as soon as Loki parked, Conrad flew down from the roof to greet them. Given the late hour, it was easy to spot the car along the half-mile driveway. Loki climbed out with a badly stiff spine and Alexia slowly exited the car head deep in the book. With Toon completely absorbed in the book, Conrad regarded the Earth Mare first. I didn't hear of any disasters on the local news about you two. Loki winced while rubbing the soreness out of her back. Disappointed? He grunted derisively. Hardly. Of course, the worldwide scandal of the world government's complete failure to stop the meteor 6 times probably overrode anything dealing with you two. The pair watched Alexia walk right past them with her nose buried in the tome. Conrad might have felt as if she didn't care about him if he didn't already know the mare would get lost in her reading. Sure enough, both other ponies saw her almost smack her head against the book when it collided with the closed door. He walked over to greet her while she mumbled to herself and put the book down. Glad to see you made it back in one piece. Toon smiled at hearing his voice and forgot the book. Hey Con. She tried to give a friendly nuzzle, but the back of her mind screamed at her and she pulled back at the last second. Damn it. I can't even touch him without freaking. She backed up a foot with a forced smile. Sorry. So how was flying today? Conrad thought it was best to avoid making her any more uncomfortable and ignored the behavior. Fewer crashes this time. I've noticed that I heal a lot faster than when I was human. That's good to hear. She pawed the ground, cursing the mental wall keeping her from going any further with him. The fair was mostly enjoyable. People didn't react as negatively to us as I thought they would. She went on to briefly explain the events of the fair. Loki silently thanked her for leaving out the ill-fated pranks towards the end. He was genuinely pleased at the warm, if scarily over-exuberant, reception they received. He still remained cautious. I'm glad you came to no harm. But I have to ask. Did anyone see you leave or what car you drove? Of course not. Loki butted in. With the bracelets, we're like instant ninjas. No one saw us coming or going. He nodded. Excellent. The less people know about where we are the better. As they discussed how to approach relations with human society, Loki became increasingly aware of Alexia's small attempts to stand closer to Conrad, only to start sweating profusely when he took notice and she would inch back. Loki was seconds away from groaning in exasperation. This is utterly ridiculous. Time to settle this my way. As Conrad was commenting on the bizarre shipment Loki ordered, said Mare pulled him aside and called out to Alexia over her shoulder. I got some things that need saying with the samurai here. Why don't you grab a bite to eat? Toon was worried Conrad would bite Loki's head off by the fierce glare he was casting at her. Well, okay then. Please don't kill each other. Conrad's scowl faded slightly when he noticed Loki was trying to get Alexia out of earshot. What are you planning now? When Toon was inside, she stopped dragging him by the hoof. All right, listen. I found out what's wrong with Alex. And? He replied impatiently. And? She's got some serious issues with you that has only one solution. He was already aware of the problem, but he was wary of any solution coming from Loki. Well, let me hear it. You need to bang the last bits of stupid out of her head. She was met with confusion, so she put it more bluntly. I swear, now I know why she's so dense sometimes. You need to mount her. He would have crossed his arms in bemusement if he still had any. That's your master plan? Have sex and hope she gets over it. I hear that tone. She replied curtly. You can't tell me you haven't noticed her trying to get close to you. I have actually. Why do you think I asked you to talk with her in the first place? Well, we talked. She exclaimed. She already agreed to do it, all you gotta do is rut her. Why aren't you jumping at this? Because all I've got is your word that you miraculously got her to agree to do that when she can barely stand to touch me anymore. If it wasn't for her constantly trying to, I'd think she was uninterested. Loki looked proud of herself. Yes, well, not everyone can be blessed with a silver tongue. Or fist for that matter. Now I probably need to remind her of the promise she made, so go on up to your room. I'll send her along shortly. Having Toon go to him sounded more believable than having him go to her. I'm still going to ask her when she arrives. I wouldn't put it past this menace to trick Alexia into going in my room for a different reason. He broke from his musing to address her. Fine. Just remember, Loki, pulling one of your stupid pranks on me is bad enough. But if this causes her any harm, I will kill you. Look, buddy. She jabbed him with a hoof. I wouldn't use her to get to you. And I sure as hell wouldn't do this to Alex if she didn't want to. So get over yourself. She pushed past him, grumbling in disgust. Conrad watched her leave, feeling no amount of remorse towards the object of continual torment. When she was no longer in sight, he flew up to his bedroom to cool down in the off chance she was telling the truth. Loki entered the foyer wanting to scream. As much as she wanted to punch him, she expected Conrad to be hostile. I guess I have been a little too mean towards him. Course, if he learned how to take a joke, then he'd be a lot better company. She walked into the kitchen to find Toon had wasted no time shoveling carrots and cold broccoli in her mouth. Loki snickered on her approach. I didn't think you were hungry enough to forget table manners. Toon finished swallowing while keeping 2 carrots and a tree of broccoli in her magic. I haven't forgotten any manners, thank you. She pseudo-pouted. This is finger food anyway. Ahoy. Well, at any rate. Do you remember that talk we had? The silver unicorn nearly choked on her food and coughed to clear it out. Yes, I remember. She levitated the food onto the counter. Is that what you were talking to Conrad about just now? Loki could tell her friend was already locking up again. I knew it, she needs it done quickly or she'll cave. It might work if she was blindfolded, but that samurai would never go for that. She rushed over to lay a calming hoof on her shoulder. Yes it is, and I know you want this, right? Alexia didn't trust herself to say yes, so she nodded vigorously. That only concerned Loki even more. Then don't think about it. Thinking is bad, okay? Right. No thinking. She remembered the calming routines the tome taught her, and Toon felt her panic going away. Just walk in and no thinking. Loki commanded. Toon went silent and stood stock still. Loki sighed and started to push her along to the 2nd floor. If it will help you at all, you can just let Connie do all the work. Toon nodded absently, trying to follow Loki's advice. At Conrad's door, Loki opened it and shoved the near catatonic unicorn inside. Loki stuck her head in to speak to the baffled stallion. She's trying not to think about it, but she wouldn't be here if she didn't want to. Tell her to do some magic and give her horn a good lick or two. That'll get her started. Before he could question her further, Loki shut the door behind her. Conrad carefully approached the unicorn, who was trying to keep herself from hyperventilating. You don't have to do this. No. No. She screamed at herself before repeating it to him. No. Don't tell me that. Don't give me any encouragement to run off. She turned around to look at him in the eye. I don't care what I say after this. Just don't stop. Stop thinking. Light the horn, something simple. Let him do it all. She sewed her eyes shut and started channeling a weak light spell. Loki jokingly mentioned the unicorn's horn being a source of erogenous pleasure. At the time he brushed the comment off as teasing, but Toon was giving credence to Loki's words. She's fighting herself so hard to just stand here. I'll do it, but if she starts getting too weirded out, I'm calling it off. The last thing she needs is mental scaring. He started cautiously licking her horn at the base and slowly working his way up. Alexia's reaction surprised him on how quick it was, and she moaned amorously before he could begin again. Seeing that Loki had been honest about it, Conrad continued licking Toon's horn. Aside from her increasingly labored breathing and gasps of pleasure, Toon remained silent. Her mind was embroiled with such turmoil that she forced herself to ignore the signals from her body. Half of her wanted to scream in fury at Conrad and storm out of the room. The other half wanted to be rid of the other with equal passion. I want this. I need this. She kept shouting the mantra in her mind repeatedly in the face of all the resentment, terror, and hatred her subconscious threw at her. Conrad was at a loss when Alexia made no cognitive reaction to his actions. Yet her body was reacting to her horn as much as Loki claimed it would. What the green mare neglected to mention were the pheromones. By themselves the scent would have only gotten a stir out of him, but with him in the moment, Conrad found himself no longer willing to wait anymore and stopped caressing her horn with his tongue. Do I guide her to the bed? Conrad had no idea how best to approach sex as a quadruped. He gave another lick to keep her active and she instinctively widened her stance. Realization dawned on him. That's one way to get an answer. ******. I did it. I finally did it. Conrad was unsure of her mental state and waited before approaching her and offering a hoof to pick her up. She studied the hoof before turning to its owner. She felt a weak but honest smile cross her features. I need some time. Do you mind if I stay here for a bit? The same disgust-filled emotions demanded her to reject him, to hate him for what he did, to fling him against the wall until he stopped moving, tried to push its way to the surface. However, Alexia noted with smug satisfaction that the self-loathing was weaker than it used to be. Weak enough that seeing Conrad so soon after intercourse that she could hide it from him. Despite her efforts, he could see the exhausted mare was still fighting herself. He lowered his hoof back to the floor. Of course. I'll be in the living room should you need me. She watched him leave with a grin on her face. Her subconscious raged at her, but Toon only laughed at it. I finally did it. I know what I need to do to kill you completely. She said to her bitter half that was trying to fill her with abhorrence. You can't stop me now. I will be a mare in body and spirit. I have to be. I refuse to have a male mind inside a female body. I'm not exactly sure what difference it would make. She admitted to herself with a shrug. Hell, I could have been one the moment I physically became a pony. Maybe that's why I want this so badly. She tested her limbs and shakily climbed to her hooves. Whatever the case may be, I'm not going to stop until I'm free of this. Meanwhile in the kitchen, Loki was munching on some oats while tapping on her keyboard. She found an extension cord and it ran from her place on the lounge chair to the wall. I can't believe I'm saying this, but these taste way better than lunch did. Stupid taste buds, there's nothing more empowering than eating meat. Well, as far as dinner is concerned. She glanced up at the sound of hoof steps to witness Conrad entering to sit down on the sofa. The aroma of shampoo filled the air. So? She said coyly. Should I lock my door tonight to keep a knife out of my back? No, every fiber in his being tried to stop him from saying what honor demanded of him. As much as it pains me. Whatever Alexia is fighting, I believe that helped her. He had to force the next words out. Thank you for helping her, Loki, and I apologize for threatening you. Accepted. She smirked knowingly at him. You can't tell me you didn't enjoy it though. He straightened up in his seat to speak more seriously, if only to forget he had just apologized to the mare who tormented him on a daily basis. I would have preferred it if she had been able to enjoy it as well. The remark confused her. Wait. Did you or did you not get her off? He decided to forego the details. I did. However, it was obvious she was fighting to stay. Well, just ask her when she comes down. She yawned. In the meantime, I'm going to sleep. Don't knife me in my sleep, okay? She finished off the bowl and got up to take it to the sink. You have my word. He called after her. With nothing better to do, he unfolded a wing and started preening. Wish I had gotten a book on wings like Toon did with magic. I still have no idea what I'm doing right or wrong. Nibbling carefully with his teeth, he knew enough to pluck any damaged feathers and straighten the rest of them. His less than stellar flying abilities left a handful of broken veins. I should ask Alexia for her phone so I can look up preening methods. Close to 2.5 hours later, Alexia emerged from the foyer. Like the Pegasus before her, she too had cleaned herself up. Conrad abandoned his painstakingly slow preening to meet her content expression. Are you well, Alexia? More than I have been. She walked around the sofa to sit next to him. I wanted to thank you for helping me like this. I know I wasn't exactly receptive in the way I'm sure you're used to. He became mildly uncomfortable with how fearful she became when he wanted to pull out. I am hardly in a place to complain about such a thing. Not with what you went through. He had no real understanding of her problem as she never spoke of it until the talk with Loki in the car, but he knew inner pain when he saw it. I'll admit I didn't get much enjoyment out of it. She kept a weak smile to keep from having to speak of any details. But I know it'll be better if we do it again. About that, he said reluctantly. I think I should avoid releasing inside you again. We don't want to risk complicating things. For a moment Alexia was worried he was having serious reservations. I can't get pregnant, Conrad. I'm not in heat. He gave her a quizzical look. What makes you think you even have a heat cycle? Because horses and normal ponies are that way. He had no idea about a horse's cycle, but had been around dogs and cats long enough to know what she meant. I'll take your word for it, but we're not mundane barnyard ponies now, are we? Toon remembered how badly the mental wall was sundered by Conrad climaxing within her. Everything before that had only chipped at the barrier. She was desperate to remove the wall as soon as possible. It was that desperation that kept her from erring on the side of caution. Conrad, if I wasn't sure about this, then I wouldn't ask you to stay in. I know I don't have any hard evidence, but I'm practically 100% sure that I can only get pregnant while in heat. She broke eye contact to fumble with her hooves. It's not exactly a prospect I'm looking forward to, but it's a package deal. Conrad rubbed his jaw in contemplation. She seems dead set on that being fact. Maybe I'm imposing the human cycle onto her. He remembered the feeling of climaxing in her was far more enjoyable than he'd let on to anyone. I'm no biology expert and she's the one who's been researching this stuff. If she believes that's how it works, then I don't have any reason to argue. He put his hoof down and nodded at her. Okay, so we don't have to worry about pregnancy. However, I would be more comfortable if you kept watch over yourself. You've never experienced heat before, so you may not notice it when it arrives. She chuckled despite the topic of conversation. Given how jacked up my cat used to get when she was in season, I'd like to think that sort of thing can't sneak up on me. He shared in her good humor. Would you like something to drink? Not right now. Her mind drifted to more carnal desires. The damaged voice condemning her next course of action reappeared in a vengeance. It's still strong, but not as much as it used to be. And I don't intend to stop until this wall comes crashing down. Doing her best to ignore the waves of bile, she inched closer and nuzzled him briefly before the cries of her subconscious forced her to part from him. I know it may be presumptuous of me, she said provocatively, much to the rage of her subconscious. But could you help me one more time tonight? What would you have me do? He asked, not following her exactly. The wall cracked and crumbled further, but remained to constantly harass her thoughts. Alexia wanted the obstacle gone, and she knew the single best way to be rid of it. She climbed off the couch and presented her glowing horn to him. Me.